Hi, my name is Carmen, and I am an early childhood special education teacher, a life and ADHD coach, and I'm the host of this podcast, Authentically ADHD. I created this podcast to help anyone wondering if they have ADHD, people who have been diagnosed for a while and want some more support and community. I'm here to bring you the latest research on ADHD and neurodiversities while we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of ADHD. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, my friend, and welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing? I've been doing great, and if you have seen my content, on Instagram mostly. That's where it's kind of blowing up. I will have some exciting news. I was asked to be a brand ambassador for one of my favorite podcasts, and it's called the Your Weekly Therapy podcast. And it is a podcast run by Mr. Williams Pre-K, Tell Williams, and Anne Marie DePrietero. They are so funny. Their chemistry is amazing. They talk all things mental health. They're super educational and they manage to be really funny. They both have raging ADHD, so they're super relatable people. And they're also really, really nice. They're super nice. So, yeah, go check out my content, go follow them, listen to their podcast. I am going to link them in the show notes. So, that is my wonderful news. School year is almost over. We're coming to a close. We're doing a yearly end of the year celebration. And I have my students help me at the end of each year. They help us wash the toys. We use the sensory table. If you don't know what that is, it's just basically a big table that we put water or sand into. For sensory experiences, but we use that and we put the toys in there with soap and water, and the kids help wash them. The kids help do things like, helping us put away some of the excess toys and just simple cleaning tasks that helps them to own responsibility for their environments, whether that be at school or at home. So that is something that you can do with your kids, is help them gain that autonomy of, teach them how to do their own laundry, take some of those tasks off of you. And I'm talking, age appropriate things. I'm not asking the students to be, using cleaning spray. I have 3 to 5-year-olds in my room. We put, some dish soap and some water in a sensory table, and they wash the pretend food and the pretend little people and things like that that can go in water. We're not having them scrub down with toothbrushes. This ain't Annie or anything. So, pick out those age appropriate chores that you can give to your kids that will help, take that load off of you, especially if you're, a mama. I'm not a mom, but this is what I do with my students. And I'm telling you, every year I send home age appropriate chores, like this little list of age appropriate chores. And you can Google this. And it goes from age 3 to 5, I think, all the way up to age 15 to 18 or something like that. It's a really good resource. So yeah, after I've, gabbed for a couple minutes, how are you? Have you said something nice to yourself today? If not, go ahead and just try to say a little something nice to yourself right now. I'll wait. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you, but just give it a quick little pause and maybe just try to say something on the nice side to yourself. All right, so it is summer here at my school district, and that means I'll be a lot more active on social media coming up here very soon, and I'm going to have time to continue creating bonus content for you all, creating content for my Patreon. So please go check those things out. Follow me at Authentically ADHD _ podcast. And on TikTok, it's Carmen _ Authentically ADHD. I believe. It's in the show notes. It's definitely in the show notes. Speaking of extra supports, I just wanted to tell you all that I've updated my Patreon page to include all of the resources that I've really ever made to be held in one place. Just head to my show notes. The VIP members do get a little extra, but you can also purchase like my brand new ultimate ADHD journal and planner, which I've been using for the past year. That has worked. Nothing is priced over $10, and everything is at least 50 to 100 pages that you can download and print. You can get it binded and sent to you, or you can just read it off your screen and use notebook paper. So if you want or need any type of that kind of extra support, just head to my show notes and click the Patreon link to join. I hope to see you in there. All right, my friends. So let's get into the topic. What I chose today was a suggestion that I received, and thinking about summer got me really deep diving into the topic today, which is multitasking. Can ADHDers successfully multitask? Now, the connection to my own experience is that I am much more likely to get stuck in the hamster wheel of multitasking when I do not have a built-in structure throughout the day like my workday schedule provides. That's a structured day. I have to be at work at a certain time. I have a certain time to eat lunch. There's a certain time when I need to go home, etc., etc. When I work in the summer, I do different work. First of all, I do a lot more podcasting, coaching, tutoring, and things like that. So I make my own hours, and essentially I'm accountable to my clients and myself, being my own boss in the summer. And it's a little different and a little more difficult for my ADHD brain because of the lack of built-in structure. The fact that I have to build in that structure, it doesn't lend to me always being the most productive that I could be, or the most, the best version of myself, if you will. So this can lead me into multitasking, which, hint, hint, the answer to the question that I asked, can ADHDers successfully multitask? No. The short answer is no. It doesn't work for most humans, ones with or without ADHD, but especially those of us with ADHD, it doesn't work. Now, why, you ask? Well, let's talk about what multitasking really is and how it slows. It shows up in different ways, like when you're neurodiverse, and how it slows us down. So, multitasking can be defined by its name pretty much, but it's doing more than one task at a time. I know you're saying I do two things at a time all the time, but like, stick with me here, because I am going to go into when you can do two things at one time, because the true definition is trying to do two or more tasks that require cognitive attention in order to complete them accurately at the same time. For example, trying to talk on the phone while answering emails, or watching TV while writing a paper. Both tasks need attention. I'm not talking about watching, like putting on the TV in the background, like episodes you've seen. I'm talking about trying to watch a new TV episode that you like while writing a paper, okay? Or trying to talk on the phone while you're trying to write a paper. Like, I don't know how many times if I'm on the phone, I can't be writing something down. I'm going to write down what the person is saying to me, or I'm going to write down what I was going to say back to the person. Both of the tasks need attention. So one of the two will either need to be redone because you messed it up, or you'll only get halfway through one or both of them, and neither of them are going to get done in the way that you're capable of getting them done. Now, I do acknowledge that mental attention differs for everyone. So I want you to try to come up with some tasks that require your undivided attention. Do you think that you could do those two tasks at the same time? Because multitasking is not a good strategy for the neurodiverse. We have brains that have low levels of dopamine and executive functions that are deficient. They don't work like regular, typically developing humans. Okay? This means that our ability to have cognitive flexibility, aka task switch, is a lot harder for us. Transitions are difficult. If you've ever found yourself just sitting in the car waiting, or even being stuck in hyperfocus, but sitting in the car because you don't want to go into work, or sitting in the car after you get home because you don't want to go inside, that's a transition. What you're doing is putting off the transition, because task switching, especially the way that we do it in multitasking, it creates mental fatigue. We are unable to predict how long any task is going to take because of all of the different transitions, and the fact that multitasking actually takes a longer time than doing one thing at a time because you're constantly task switching. Does this make sense? Are you following me? I really hope you are, because sometimes I feel like I don't make sense. There is one type of multitasking which it's not even it's called parallel tasking. And this is something that can work for us. And I've talked about it before because it does work really well for me. Parallel tasking is doing two low attention demanding things at one time. I often use this strategy to complete mundane, boring daily tasks or chores. For example, I listen to music while doing the dishes, call a friend while doing laundry, or listen to one of my favorite, many, many, many favorite podcasts while I'm walking. The key is that tasks are almost like the tasks that you can do in parallel tasking can almost be done with little to no mental effort, okay? This varies now from person to person, just like ADHD varies from person to person. Some people can have the TV on while answering emails. I personally cannot. I can have focus sounds or podcasts that I've heard before on a lower volume in the background. Sometimes I can have the TV on while answering emails, but honestly, I really just need focus music or silence. Um, Another reason that multitasking does not work for our brains is that our brains aren't meant to divide attention in that way. And I'm talking about human brains in general. We are not wired to divide attention in that way, but especially neurodiverse people, because we have an overabundance of attention and we have a hard time regulating it. Trying to regulate it and divide it in the way that it requires for multitasking, it's just very difficult because our brains do not naturally prioritize things. First of all, all of the tasks seem to have the same priority level. That's how, our brains work. We don't prioritize naturally. This can lead to decision fatigue, overwhelm, and then eventually task paralysis. And then you're just not going to get anything done. And then there's the inevitable shame that comes after, we haven't completed what we wanted to complete. And it's a big old, terrible, awful cycle on a hamster wheel that I don't know why we're trying to do this to ourselves. So, short answer to the question, does multitasking work for the neurodiverse ADHDer? No, it does not. It actually can be it can negatively impact you, which I learned that in the research, and it didn't surprise me, but I was like, oh, whoa, like this is actually way more of a harmful behavior than I thought it was. Hey there, ADHD. I see you. And if you're looking for some more support for yourself, your children, or both, my summer one-on-one coaching program is officially open. It's a program I built last summer as a summer boot camp type thing, and it'll teach you how to work with your brain instead of fighting against it, learning how to support yourself and your family in a self-loving and self-trusting way. It'll teach you how to do this through compassion and self-awareness. If you're interested, sign up through the link in the show notes. Keep being authentic, my friend. Now, back to the show. So, hyperfocus is another hole that we can fall into when using multitasking. ADHDers have interest based nervous systems, okay? So, we are more likely to fall into hyperfocus when we're doing something that we enjoy. The issue here is what we enjoy may not always be the task that is actually the priority. Essentially, any way that multitasking shows up in our lives is not beneficial. It's not conducive, and we do not get more done. We truly end up getting less done. And because of the constant task switching, the quality of our work is going to suffer. So, what can we do to help us to not multitask? I'm so glad you asked because, as you know, I don't like to, just tell you all the doom and gloom about ADHD and why it sucks and whatever, and then not give you, some tips, some things to munch on to try to, help to combat some of these things. So, what can we do? Some of these may sound kind of repetitive or familiar from other episodes, like because they're tips that work for different things. But also we have ADHD, so repetition is good for us. So the first thing we can do is treat our ADHD. Yes, treat your ADHD, whether that means medication, therapy, coaching, whatever way works for you. Please treat your ADHD. Meet your basic needs, okay? Eat and drink water and make sure you get outside and take your vitamins, etc., okay? That's first because we are not going to be able to be the best version of ourselves if we don't meet our basic needs, okay? So, priorities. We need to identify those. That's the next step. Identify your priorities and then constrain them to doing one thing at a time. I know you're cringing right now. I know the feeling because when my coach used to use the word constraint or say do one thing at a time, I used to cringe real bad and I hated it, but it truly works. It helps us get more done at a better quality. I promise you. From my own experience, from my research, from stories from my clients, constraining to one thing at a time is extremely beneficial for our brains. We also need to consciously prioritize our tasks because our brains do not do this naturally like a neurotypical brain does. A neurotypical brain will take 3 tasks and organize them to top down bottom to importance, I know I need to do this first, this second. A typically developing brain learns to do this naturally. It sucks, but the ADHD brain does not. Our tasks seem to all be at the same level of priority. Like everything is the most important. So I don't know what to do first. So all these things, and it creates anxiety. So we need to use our executive brain to prioritize our tasks. Some ways that we can do this is like by writing out all of the tasks. And then what I do is prioritize them by numbers using due dates, whether somebody is waiting on me for something, or if I have a self imposed deadline that I'm trying to meet. If it's due, to the boss, if it's due to, you know, whoever, and when is that due date, put them in order, prioritize accordingly. Some other ways to combat multitasking is to schedule in some breaks throughout your day. Actually, just sitting down and planning out our day, like that really, really helps. Like sit down in the morning, and I'm not talking about like you don't have to do a whole morning routine of get your coffee and plan your routine and just sit down sometime in the morning, pull out a notebook or a piece of paper and a pen, and just write down the things that you want to get done. Look at them and prioritize what actually needs to get done and what can wait. This really helps us stay in doing one task at a time. Building in those breaks throughout your day helps us stay focused on one task at a time and feeds the dopamine reward loop in our brain. So, like when you figure out what you need to get done, what's vital and what can wait, schedule the tasks through something, whether it's reminders on your phone, or I personally use Sunsama, and it syncs right with my Google Calendar. So any appointments that I put on my Google Calendar, which that's where all of my things go, and in the reminder app, which is also synced with the Google Calendar, it really helps me. And then I break down the tasks. Either I do it myself, use Goblin.tools, or I use ChatGPT, and then time them out. I usually triple the time that I originally think it will take. And I add in dopamine by doing things like racing the timer, hopping on a body double, or listening to a favorite podcast. Lately, it's the podcast. It's definitely your weekly therapy podcast with Tell Williams, aka Mr. Williams Pre-K, Pause Man, and Anne Marie DePrietro, aka Still a Nurse Practitioner. I'm definitely going to link that podcast in the show notes because, as you can tell, I'm very, very excited about it. So, I've given examples for how you can plan out your day, make tasks more fun, and use parallel tasking. How can you gamify your tasks? I told you what works for me and gave you some examples, but what would work for you? Try to reward yourself when you complete something, or when you resist the urge to follow your distraction or your impulse. What systems do you think you would benefit from if you put them in place? What can you do to parallel task your mundane, boring chores? Remember, it's not about doing it right, but making it work for you, not making it more work for you. You follow me? The last tip I do want to share with you is that sometimes it's totally cool to take advantage of your hyperfocus when it pops up, especially when you get a burst of it when doing an essential task. Just don't forget to get yourself some water and a snack, because hyperfocus usually makes us oblivious to all of our basic needs. So if you have some water and a snack right there, it's easily accessible and you can just reach for it. I really hope this episode helped you understand the myth of multitasking and how to combat it when you find yourself in that hamster wheel. Make it work for you. Do not make it more work for yourself. Okay? All right, my friends. That is all I have for now. Stay authentic, and we will talk soon.